a conservative source, basically slamming her for supporting, the rights of nature, and how what a radical leftist progressive Bernie Sanders type, they're trying to point to put her as, which wasn't characteristically true. But I think that's one of the issues that you have in today's political climate, whether you're in the court system or which is becoming increasingly politicized, and the legislature. So how do you get broad buy-in from both sides of the aisle? And not that I think should be as big a stakeholder, but especially in Florida and America, the business community is a huge influencer of what happens. And so how do you see getting their buy-off when a lot of times they just see this as directly against their interests?
Absolutely, yes. And once again, you've identified one of the main issues that we deal with. And, in our last academy, the topic was effective advocacy techniques. And, so what I always tell people is that you have to craft your message, understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, but then you have to translate that message into whatever language the person you're talking to understands. So going back to the beginning of our lecture today, we heard from, Thomas Berry, who talked about how we can't have humans on a sick planet, how we can't have a functioning, viable Earth economy, human economy, if we're destroying the Earth economy, right? So, when we look at Florida specifically, when you're talking to the business community, ecotourism in Florida is an $8 billion a year industry. People aren't just coming here for Disney. They're coming here to visit the springs. They're coming here to go on our amazing hiking trails. They're coming to go to the Everglades, to go to the Keys. All of these things that are being destroyed day by day. We know that the springs are green and soupy now. The Everglades are drying up. The Keys are going underwater. All of these things are happening, and it's going to cost Florida a huge amount of money. If we're talking about, human health and safety, when we look at the negative effects that environmental degradation has on that, you can put these things into terms that whoever you're talking to understands. So in that, I know exactly what you're talking about there. That was Nicole Wilson. She's the Berry grad who's running. And I did see that, it's not my district, but I did see that that mailer that went out from her opponents. The big problem there that would be addressed with those particular people is, they're mostly concerned with, business opportunities and, and development and job creation and things like that. But it comes back to those same arguments that if we have a declining environment, if we have, declining health, if we have declining property values, if we have all of these things that are going to happen. I mean, look at, what happens along the Gulf Coast when the algal blooms come in, all the fish kills, all of this has such negative impacts on more than just the environment. So, obviously I want everyone to just, recognize the inherent rights of nature and defend them because it's the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, everybody has that thing that they care about. And so what we need to do is figure out what language they're speaking and speak it to them. And the thing about the environment is that it affects everything. And that when we have that environmental degradation, it degrades all of these different areas. And so that's how we try to reach across that aisle and put that in languages that people understand. So I hope that answered your question. And do we have somebody else? I think there's one more hand. Okay, hi, you should be unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
There you are, yep.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize my microphone wasn't connected.
Yeah.
I could hear you just fine, but so my name is Baina Sharat. My question is, I live in Winter Springs, and the past couple weeks we've had black bear sightings in several of the communities. And I saw a couple days ago where one of the black bears was shot and killed in Sanford. So how do we balance the need for people I guess, to have a place to live with the rights of the bear, because
Right.
we've actually come and invaded his habitat.
Mhm.
And the bear is, it's not the bear's fault. He's in the neighborhood. He has no place to go. So how do we balance it while keeping the bear safe and also figuring out a way, a place for people to live? How do we find that balance? Because and my fear is that as these bears continue to be sighted and continue to come onto people's private property, they're going to get hurt. And I know they're in danger, but
Yeah.
at the moment that they're in someone's property, because people are not educated about it, it puts the bear at risk. So how do we find that balance, and what is the solution?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what you've identified is really it's the aftermath of bad decision making, and so now when we're looking at these potential solutions, unfortunately, it's not just about, how do we do this better going forward, but how do we fix what we've already done? And that's exactly, sort of the issue that you've identified there. In terms of finding that balance, that's where that understanding of, the natural systems comes into play. That's where we have to look at exactly what effect we're having on that ecosystem around us. Is that a good place to be building? What effect is that going to have? And like you said, what you've identified there is a situation where we didn't do that. And so now people's yards are in the middle of the bear's home, and we're getting mad that the bears are there, because nobody told them they were evicted. So that is the issue there. In terms of, going forward, it's about incorporating this general ecological understanding into the lawmaking, into the zoning, into all of these things, to make sure we're having a better understanding of how we address that and how we can, coexist. I mean, that's what we have to do, is coexist. We do exist. We're going to take up space. We're going to affect the world around us. And that's our right as human beings. But it's making sure that we're doing it in a way that then we don't have these negative effects afterward, and what that looks like. I wish there was just a simple answer I could give you, but it really is a case-by-case basis. It really is something, that would have to be dealt with by, the experts in those fields. I mean, that's the thing about it, is it's expanding the stakeholders in these discussions beyond just, we want to put a development here. We want to, it's very pretty here. We want to live here. Well, that's the anthropocentric point of view. That's we haven't checked in with the bears. We have, as kind of silly as that sounds, it's in a greater sense of what we have to do. And it's about expanding, looking back at that sustainability model and seeing how we're looking at things so disjointedly. And we're looking at, what the benefits would be to humans of building this, what the benefits would be, to our profits. But we never looked at what the degradation would be to the environment for doing that. And now we see where that effect in that second graphic that we were looking at, is having, and that the one did not adequately take into account the other, which did not at all take into account the other. And we're seeing the effects of that afterward. So it's unfortunately not an easy answer. It's unfortunately not something that I can say we just simply do this. But at this stage in our efforts, like I said, it's not only creating a system going forward that is going to do this, but we also have to come up with those ways to fix what we've already done and address it. And I'm sorry, I know that is not, a satisfying answer, but that's unfortunately where we are right now. I think I saw another hand. Let's see.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So I live in Volusia County, like right on the edge of Seminole, and there's a ton of black bears over here. And I know a few years ago they opened up a season for them. So I know, like, we talk about how as we expand, we're not keeping an eye out for the bear for the black bears, so that now we see them more. But I've done like my fair share of research, but like the black bear population is going up as well. Like, I don't think it's just development that's now pushing these bears into our neighborhoods, but that's why they opened up a season. It was like, I don't know, 4 years ago in either Volusia or Seminole County. And there is a preserve in Sanford, like right on the river, I believe. There's also a neighborhood right next to it. So, but yeah, I mean, the population is also going up. So I don't think I don't want to say, oh, well, it's all development. But if it does become a problem, you know, I mean, there's ways to regulate that too. But is there a way to regulate that without us killing them?
Right. So the issue with the black bear hunts is that, you know, while the numbers are going up, the numbers are still not where they're supposed to be, you know, in terms of a healthy, thriving population of that species. So, you know, even a lot of hunting groups were opposed to that bear hunt a few years ago because, you know, they said that it did not have an ecological benefit, you know, and this is one of those areas where, you know, people kind of see strange bedfellows, you know, you don't always think of hunters and, you know, kind of tree huggers all working together, but ultimately at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, you know, they cannot hunt if we've destroyed the ecosystem. So, you know, we're all looking for the same results in the end. And, you know, that hunt was generally opposed by people on many sides of the issue, because what it came down to was, again, what does a healthy, thriving, able to regenerate, you know, population look like? And we've taken that down too far in that sense because they have become a nuisance. Okay, so that was really all the background with that. And again, that sort of comes down to, we need to have this greater consideration for the ecological integrity of the world around us, you know? And what does that look like? You know, does it look like completely preserving certain areas? Does it look like, you know, removals? And that's what I mean. There's so many different ways of dealing with that, you know, it is a case-by-case basis. But the point of this is that we would have laws and policies that force us to ask those questions, you know? We might not always get the answer that everybody wants, you know? At the end of the day, the human population is what it is. People need to be somewhere. They need to consume. They need to, you know, like I said, we have our own human rights as well. But we need to make sure that our rights are not overtaking everyone else's rights. And so it's about having these policies and this system that before we build that development, before we make these decisions, we need to ask those questions. And sometimes some things might lose out, you know, that's the thing about it, is that even with human rights, you know, we see that. We argue things all the time, but this shouldn't be in my backyard, this shouldn't be near me. But at the end of the day, you might need that, and it's the only place it can go. As we're going to see in our last class with this, the decisions that we make with that, we put them in places with the people we don't care about generally. And so we're not taking human beings into account, and we are violating those rights constantly. But the point is that we're doing it against non-human entities at a much greater pace and in a way that is having these really degenerative effects. So, so again, not the most satisfying answer, but, you know, the point of these changes is that it forces us to ask these questions. And I think I saw another hand pop up in our last few minutes.
Yeah, I did. This is Trevor again. I'm really close to the black bear issue. So one of the things too that I have I've brought up to the FWC is the fact that the hunt isn't actually an effective population management control tool. So it's really just, you know, about 200 people can get the Yayas hunting, which sure, there's an argument that, you know, that's a public resource and that's how we want to use it. And my argument is obviously that the vast majority of the public doesn't want to use that way, so we need to respect that. But the other thing is that the excuse of the population is, you know, killing bears actually doesn't reduce the population as much as that sounds, because the female bears actually, they will have as many cubs as the ecosystem in the area can support.
It's a huge self-regulating species for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually reduce the bear population. You have to do proactive bear management. You have to do trash can ordinances and stuff like that. And I also think that they need to do stuff like, you know, if you really think that you need to reduce the population, you know, like sterilize the females or something like that. That could actually be meaningfully. And there are actually ways to do that. You can have to shoot them with darts to do that. So And the other thing is, I hate to disagree with facts, but the facts that we're going off of is what the FWC has published. And there's some controversy as to how they reach those numbers. The ridiculous growth rate that they've published it really kind of flies in the face of, I think, what the core data is. So I don't think there's quite as many bears out there as we would like to think. It's just more that, we're seeing them more because we keep building their habitat.
Yeah, thank you for that. Some important points. Yeah, and again, that just sort of takes us back to what are we trying to accomplish with these changes in our legal system, and what does this recognition, like what effect will that have? And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like you pointed out a great issue there, that bear populations are self-regulating, that if there are not enough resources for the bears, they will not reproduce. I mean, that's just one of the things. So it does come down to, making sure that we are cohabitating more effectively than, again, this sort of dominion and control that we're so used to having over the non-human entities in our ecosystem. We are just with just 1 minute left. I just wanted to, make sure that we just sort of understand the underlying philosophies behind these things we're going to be talking about over the next couple weeks. And again, I know that this was very brief, and that these are very complex issues, and that they're huge changes from the way we do things. And there are lots of examples all over the world. So I do want to encourage you that, if you're interested in hearing more about this, please just reach out to us. We'd love to just have a chat with you about it, or take one of the courses that are offered at Berry. It is a very unique experience. It is not something that is offered in many law schools. So, you want to take advantage of that while you're here. And I just want to open up now and just see if anyone has logistical questions, about the Academy, about how it works. Is there anything you're confused about, anything we're not sharing? Effectively, just right now is the time to ask any logistical questions. And if there aren't any, we're going to bring this session to a close and reconvene next Friday at the same time, where we will have Stacey Gordon-Sterling, who is going to talk to us about animal rights. And she is the animal law director at the Animal Legal Defense Fund. So we have a great person to talk to us about that topic. In the weeks after that, we're going to have Grant Wilson from the Earth Law Center talk to us about ecosystem rights, and Professor Nadia Ahmad talk to us about environmental justice. So hopefully by the end of this, we will have touched on a lot of these issues that we've brought up today in a more meaningful way to give us a better understanding. So just one last call for any logistical questions that anyone might have. If not, we will be reaching out this week with further reading materials, the link, and any additional information that comes up that we think will be useful to you. So I'm not seeing any hands, so I think that we are good to conclude things. Thank you, everyone, for staying the 1 minute over, and we will see you next week.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you do have additional questions, we can be reached through all of our social media channels. And as Ms. Stewart pointed out, she can be reached via email as well. Thank you all for attending.